The day had been long, and the disciples were exhausted. Crowds followed Jesus everywhere he went. People asked questions. Some needed healing, others only wanted answers. As the sun began to set, Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "Let us go to the other side of the sea." It sounded simple, it sounded ordinary. None of them knew that this quiet decision would soon place them in the middle of a terrifying storm. They stepped into the boat as the sky grew darker. The water was calm, reflecting the fading light. The disciples had crossed this sea many times before. They trusted their experience. They trusted their strength. They believed this journey would be no different. Sometimes the most dangerous storms begin when everything feels under control. As the boat moved steadily forward, Jesus lay down and slept. The sound of the water rocked him into rest. The disciples continued rowing. They did not feel afraid yet. They did not feel weak yet. They believed they could handle whatever came next. Faith often gets tested when we believe we no longer need help. As the boat moved farther from the shore, the air began to change. A cool wind brushed against their faces. At first, it felt harmless. But slowly, the wind grew stronger. The water no longer moved gently beneath the boat. Small waves began to form, rocking the vessel from side to side. The disciples noticed the change, but they did not panic yet. They had seen rough weather before. They believed they could manage what was coming. Without warning, the wind turned violent. Waves crashed against the sides of the boat. Water poured in faster than they could remove it. The sky darkened, and thunder echoed across the sea. What had once been calm became dangerous. The disciples worked harder, pulling at the oars with all their strength. But the storm did not respond to effort. Some storms do not care how experienced you are. The boat began to fill with water. The disciples shouted instructions to one another. Fear replaced confidence. Every attempt to regain control failed. The sea was stronger than their skill. In moments like these, panic grows quickly. When control disappears, fear steps in. This was no longer a test of strength. It was a test of faith. In the middle of the chaos, Jesus was still asleep. The boat shook violently around him. Waves struck without mercy. Yet he rested. The disciples looked at him in disbelief. How could he sleep while they were drowning? Silence felt confusing. Silence felt painful. Many people mistake God's silence for God's absence. Desperation overcame hesitation. The disciples rushed to Jesus and woke him. Their words were not polite. They were not calm. They cried out, "Teacher, don't you care that we are perishing?" This was more than a question. It was fear speaking. It was pain searching for reassurance. It was the cry of people who felt forgotten. Jesus rose to his feet as the storm raged on. Wind surrounded him. Waves continued to crash violently. But he was calm. He did not rush. He did not panic. He stood with authority. Peace does not depend on calm surroundings. True peace comes from knowing who is in control. Jesus spoke directly to the storm, "Peace. Be still." Immediately, the wind stopped, the waves settled, the sea became quiet. What fear could not control, his voice commanded instantly. The storm obeyed him. In that moment, the disciples realized, they were not just with a teacher, they were with someone greater than the storm itself. After the storm stopped, silence filled the air. The disciples stood still, catching their breath. Moments ago, they feared death. Now, everything was calm. The sea reflected the night sky like glass. Silence can feel strange after chaos. It gives space to think. It gives room for truth to surface. This silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. Jesus turned toward his disciples. His voice was gentle, not harsh. He asked them a simple question: "Why are you so afraid?" He did not say this to shame them. He wanted them to look inward. Fear reveals what we trust most. When fear controls us, faith is pushed aside. Jesus was teaching them where true trust begins. Then Jesus asked another question: do you still have no faith? Faith is not the absence of fear, faith is choosing trust despite fear. The disciples had seen miracles, they had heard his teachings, yet in the storm, they forgot who was with them. Many people do the same today, they remember God in peace, but forget him in pressure. The disciples did not celebrate, they did not cheer, instead, a new fear filled their hearts. They looked at Jesus and asked, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" This was not panic, this was awe. They realized they were in the presence of divine authority. The storm obeyed Jesus because creation knows its creator, wind and waves recognize his voice, nature responds instantly to his command. Humans, however, often hesitate, we question, we doubt, we fear, yet the same voice that calmed the sea, still speaks today, his power has not changed. Jesus did more than calm the sea, he revealed something deeper. Outer storms reflect inner storms, fear, anxiety, uncertainty. Jesus did not remove storms from life, he showed that peace is possible within them. The greatest battles are often fought inside the heart. The disciples struggled most when Jesus was silent. Silence tested their trust. Many people feel abandoned when prayers are not answered immediately, but silence does not mean God is absent. Sometimes, silence means he is allowing faith to grow. Faith deepens when control is removed. The disciples focused on the storm, instead of who was in the boat. Fear grows when focus shifts away from truth. Jesus was present the entire time. His presence did not change, even when circumstances did. Peace begins when we remember who walks with us through the storm. That night stayed with the disciples forever. They would face many storms ahead. Some would not involve water, others would threaten their lives, but they would remember this moment. They would remember his voice. They would remember his power. Every storm became a reminder of who they could trust. This story is not only about the past, it speaks to today. Storms still come without warning, fear still rises quickly, but Jesus remains the same. He still brings peace, he still calms hearts, and even when storms do not stop immediately, his presence gives strength to endure. Peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of Christ within them. The disciples were not in the storm because they disobeyed Jesus. They were there because they followed him. Sometimes storms come, not as punishment, but as part of the journey. Being in God's will does not mean a storm-free life, it means you are never alone in the storm. Jesus told them to cross the sea, he did not explain why. They obeyed without knowing the outcome. Faith often requires movement before clarity. Many people want answers first, and obedience later, but true faith walks forward, even when the destination is unclear. Some disciples were experienced fishermen, they knew the sea, they understood storms, yet this storm overwhelmed them. Experience has limits, skill has limits, human strength has limits. God allows moments like this to remind us that dependence on him is essential. At first, the disciples believed they could control the situation. They rowed harder, they shouted louder, they tried everything they knew, but the storm ignored their effort. Control is often an illusion. Peace begins when we release control and trust the one who never loses it. Jesus did not calm the storm immediately. He waited, not because he was powerless, but because a lesson needed time to form. Delay does not mean denial. Sometimes God allows fear to surface, so faith can be revealed. What feels like waiting is often preparation. Faith grows strongest under pressure. Comfort rarely produces deep trust. Storms strip away false confidence and reveal what truly matters. The disciples' faith was shaken, but it was also strengthened. What survived the storm became unshakable. Long after the sea became calm, the lesson remained. Every future storm reminded them of this night. They learned to recognize fear faster. They learned to turn to Jesus sooner. Storms can become teachers, if we allow them to shape us, instead of break us. The peace Jesus gives is not fragile, it does not depend on silence or safety, it exists even when waves rise. This peace guards the heart, when circumstances attack the mind, nothing external can steal what Christ places within. Whatever storm you are facing now will not last forever. Waves may rise, fear may speak loudly, but storms have an ending. God's faithfulness does not. What you are enduring today will one day become a testimony of His sustaining power. Jesus is still present in storms today. He still speaks peace to troubled hearts. He still stands when fear rises. The question is not whether storms will come, the question is who you trust when they do. When Christ is in your life, even the storm becomes a place where faith is strengthened and peace is revealed. Storms do more than test strength, they shape the soul, they reveal what comfort hides. In calm seasons, faith feels easy. In storms, faith becomes real. God does not waste storms. Every wave has a purpose, every struggle carries a lesson. What feels like chaos is often God shaping something deeper within you. Fear always speaks louder in the dark. It tells you that you are alone, it tells you that you will not survive. But fear is not truth. Fear is a voice, not a verdict. Jesus did not rebuke the storm first, He addressed it with authority. The same authority speaks over your fear today. Peace, be still. These words were spoken to the sea, but they echo in the human heart. Stillness is difficult when life feels loud, yet stillness is where trust grows. Stillness reminds us that we do not have to fight everything. Some battles are won by resting in God's presence. The disciples did not understand everything that night, but understanding was never required. Trust was. Faith does not demand explanations, it rests in relationship. God does not promise full answers, but He promises His presence, and His presence is always enough. When the storm ended, life did not suddenly become perfect, but something changed inside them. They carried a deeper confidence. They knew who had authority over their lives. Peace after the storm is not about comfort, it is about confidence in God's power. Peace is not meant to stay in one moment, it is meant to be carried forward. The disciples would face prisons, rejection, and loss, but they would remember this night, they would remember His voice. Peace learned in one storm becomes strength in the next. Jesus calmed the storm at the perfect moment, not too early, not too late. God's timing rarely matches our expectations, but it is always precise. What feels delayed is often perfectly timed. God is never late, even when fear says otherwise. This story invites every listener to make a choice. Will you trust fear, or will you trust Christ? Storms will come either way, but trust determines how you walk through them. Faith does not remove storms, it removes despair. Take a moment now, breathe deeply, bring your storm before God, the fears you carry, the worries you hide, the pressure you feel. Ask Him for peace, not the absence of problems, but the presence of His calm within your heart. May peace guard your heart, may faith rise above fear, may you remember that no storm is stronger than God's voice. Whatever waves surround you today, Christ is with you, and when He speaks, even the storm must obey. Rest in that truth, carry that peace forward.